A Valentine's evening with no exciting climax. Hopefully Joe and Craig can satisfy you on this Blue Monday. Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast covering all things Ipswich Town since 2015. My name is Mikey Pensy-Smith and this is a live reaction show looking back on Bristol Rovers 0, Ipswich Town 0. Craig, Fimbo, there were some tired faces in Suffolk this morning and a couple down in Brightlingsea as well, I gather.
Yes, I think it was a long evening for all concerned. It took me, I had a diversion into Tiptree on the way home. So I think by the time I'd done that and got home, then it'd probably be the same sort of time for everyone else to get back to Ipswich. So yeah, good, nearly 4.5 hours, 4 hours 20 it took. And I don't know if the fog was the same all the way up to Ipswich, but it was pretty horrendous in patches for most of the journey. Plus the obviously diverting off the M4 once and the M25 a couple of times. So got to see plenty of rural Wiltshire, Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Essex, and then I think some people got to see the Constable country in Suffolk as well from the A12 diversion. So yeah, a pretty horrendous evening, all things considered. But a good 4 hours post-match to digest what you'd seen for the previous 90 minutes. Indeed, and Joe Fairs, welcome to the pod. You must have been glad you didn't go all that way.
Yeah, no, it was. I wasn't sitting at home turning the TV off. Decided not even to bother with Radio Suffolk, phoning, thinking, I wish I had a 4-hour trek home now before work tomorrow. So it was nice just to slope up to bed after that.
Oh, on Valentine's night, Joe.
Lovely stuff. Okay, so joining us tonight, we've got Charlie D. Evening, everyone. We've got Michael Warner in Brisbane. In October, he said we should book the open top bus. Last month, book your playoff tickets. Now I'm thinking players can start to book their beach holiday early. He also says, P.S. hope I'm wrong. Yeah, we all hope you're wrong. Moscow Blue Mule, evening all from Moscow. Sadly, he agrees, expecting the worst. MW's here, evening all. Phil Everson. There's a little bit of negativity bouncing around, but that is completely understandable after last night. But we're surely far too good to miss out on the playoffs, aren't we, Joe?
Yeah, even though we're not playing well at the moment, we're still not losing games, are we? We've only lost 4 games all season. It's just draws, and we've got a pretty soft run in at home where our home form has held up. What we probably 7 wins away from almost being guaranteed to be in the playoffs. And you'd imagine a team that's lost 4 games all season isn't going to lose 8 of the last 16, are they? We're going to probably draw more games than we'd want to draw, but we're going to pick up enough points to be in that top 6.
And for balance, Flim Flam says, evening honky tonks. Maybe I'm a hopeless optimist, but I still think we'll be top 4. Let's not be glum. Plenty to push for. Yeah, we are ultimately, Craig, in a much better position than we have been for years at this stage. But yeah, there's a fair bit of scar tissue and a few old wounds opening up, shall we say, at the moment.
Yeah, we are currently in a better position than we have been. But we just do need to buck the trend a little bit, don't we? Because, recent form, well, not that recent form really, 10, 12 games, whether it's been, the curve isn't going upwards, shall we say, and a lot of other teams' curves are going upwards. So we just need to halt that. And as Joe said, pretty much take advantage of what are, on paper, relatively simple or more simple home games, certainly than the away ones that we've got coming up next month. And just get enough points on the board to at least guarantee us a playoff spot and see what happens from there. I think, looking at everything and looking at league tables and looking at points that we need to gain, it does look like the top 2 have just disappeared over the horizon, doesn't it?
But they just haven't stopped winning, have they? The top 2, when we said we needed to win this game to catch up with them. Firstly, we haven't won those games, which is the biggest issue. But secondly, they've won all their games in that period as well. So there hasn't been any ground ceded, and we're now 8 and 10 points behind them. Well, you're not going to turn that over in this time, because if we just go on a run from now on, what are we going to get to? 92, 93 points? Well, that's not going to be enough, is it? Unless one of those totally collapses and whatever happens, they don't seem to be doing that. They seem to be much more resilient and much more able to get the results than us. And I think,
and that's with a run, and you say that's with us putting a real decent run in as well.
Yeah, even if we put, I just think even if we put a brilliant run together, I just don't think we're going to get close to them. And it's just sad, isn't it? Because we looked like it was going to be a 3-horse race, but I don't know. It is not a 3-horse race anymore, is it? It's not even a 4 or 5-horse race. It's a 2-horse race for the title for me between those two.
Yeah, it's definitely looking that way. Ashley Anton was on the supporters coach. He got in at 3:30. Had work at 6:30.
Productive day for Ashley, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I did think about the supporters coaches. We at least, for periods of time, we could at least. Is there any traffic police watching? We could at least, go at a decent speed for the bits that were clear. But you think
70 tops.
Or I did. The cruise control edged up to 71 in some places. But you think these poor guys and girls on the supporters coaches, top speed 50 odd miles an hour at the best of times. But if you can't see, you got all these people. Oh, crazy! And you got to stop.
Well, from my experiences on the Galloway coaches, the diversions wouldn't have made that much difference because they have to divert because they're constantly getting lost anyway. But there we go. Maybe it's improved over the last few years. But before we get into last night's debacle in a little bit more detail, just a little bit of news coming out of the club today, and that's that Ben Morris has been released after 16 years with the club, Joe. He's got a move to Detroit, a lovely city, a good striker, but one who didn't quite have the luck required to make it at this level.
No, picked up injuries at bad times, serious injuries in that as well, where he'd gone away. Sort of, remember he was a player that was away in England under 19 squads or England under 17 squads going to World or European Cups and World Cups at that age, which there's not many players at Ipswich who do that. You get your odd call ups for some friendly games because they want to have a look at people, but when they're actually going to sort of the big tournaments, they are good players. But I say had some loan spells which didn't quite work out for him. One of them was at Forest Green when we were a couple of divisions above them, and he sort of went there and didn't get on there. And then he's come back, looked really sharp, had a bad injury. I know he was looking really sharp when the COVID break happened, and I think he was pushing to get into the first team at that point, but it just hasn't worked for him, has it, here since those injuries. But sort of best of luck to him. There's obviously still a player in there, but now he's now of an age where he's, I think 23 is he now, that he needs to be included in the squad list, and frankly he's just not close enough to what we need on that. So it's a good chance for him to get away and make a fresh start in a new country. I might agree with Kirk when you described Detroit as a lovely city. Maybe maybe back in the 70s.
Quoting the song, Joe, put your hands up for Detroit, a lovely city.
I love this city.
Yeah, common misconception. I might be wrong.
Is that a Popmaster question I should know, or is it?
Yeah, that's one to write down.
25 years.
Yeah, I think that song's only maybe 15, 20 years old,
Oof.
Craig. So maybe a little bit too modern, and a one-hit wonder as well, which I know is one of your favourites.
Oh, yes.
Right, let's get into the Bristol Rovers game then. And again, there was quite a few changes to the starting lineup. No place in the team for Connor Chaplin. The Dapo was back in. What were the main talking points for you, Craig, with this team?
Probably just another sort of change of personnel up the top of the pitch, really. Wes Burns kept his place, which may have been a surprise to some because he wasn't particularly great at the weekend against Wednesday. But yeah, it's just another change of personnel. Ladapo, Aluko and Harness coming in. Obviously, Broadhead, I think, had cramped up a little bit. So I think we found post-match that he probably wasn't going to start in any case. But yeah, Chaplin being dropped to the bench, and Hurst, who came in when you thought Ladapo should have played at the weekend, potentially being in form, drops to the bench. So yeah, just good luck, guys, in getting that understanding going between the front four. Centre midfield can't really change, can it? It is what it is. We've only got 2 fit central midfielders. Obviously, Donasian came in, didn't he, on the right hand side? So yeah,
that was an interesting call for me. I felt like it was maybe more of a Harry Clark game. I know that this is maybe with a little bit of hindsight, but I thought maybe Clark is better suited playing against the maybe the weaker teams where he can maraud forward a little bit more.
Yeah, you'd have thought so, wouldn't you? You sort of pigeonhole Donatian being as more of the defensively minded of the two, but then I suppose he's got more of an understanding with Burns. Maybe that was the thinking behind it.
Anything that caught your eye, Joe? Well, it was good to see a Luco in the starting.
Yeah, it
lineup, wasn't
does seem like in the midweek games that we like to change that whole front three, and I don't know, we're sort of changing it a lot at the moment. And I said there's obviously all good reasons for it, but I think it is something that maybe isn't quite working at the moment when Ladapo is playing well, isn't he? He sort of seems to be coming in, scoring goals when he does play, and not making a difference off the bench. So it was good to see him back in. And I think when you look at the comments from McKenna after the game, sort of spoiler alert, it did seem like I think he was expecting quite a different game than the one that actually played out with. And you can see why Luco played in that, but I don't know. He's not someone. My fear when I saw the team was that you see a Luco and Harness behind the striker, and neither of them get up and support the striker really. And they're not sort of high volume shot players, are they? Where like Chaplin is and Broadhead is. They're both players that want to get shots off all the time. Yeah.
Do you feel like there maybe needs to be one of Chaplin and Broadhead in that front three?
I think so. I think you need a second. Threat. You need a second striker, and if you're not going to play a two up front, you need a player who, like I know we've got John Jules who's injured, but a John Jules, a Chaplin, or a Broadhead who are players that want to get up and score goals, as opposed to want to try and sort of knit it together in the middle.
Yeah, Paul Whitmore touching upon the Donatian decision. Hats off to everyone who went last night. Why spend $1 million on a fullback and leave him out in favour of a guy you brought him in to replace? Maybe a little bit harsh on Donatian, Craig, but I suppose he has a point, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly that. There aren't many teams full stop who are spending £1.5 million on both fullbacks, let alone one of them. We did see him later on, didn't we? We'll come across it, but he went over onto the left and sort of cramped Broadhead for space, who'd come on a little bit before and was playing quite well. So yeah, it's a funny old match yesterday. There seemed to be a lot of strange decisions being made.
And we'll talk about this sort of thing a little bit more at length at the end of this show, I suppose. But Mike the Fisherman says 4 wins of 15 is somewhat shocking. If this was Cook or Lambert, fans would be calling for a change. So I'm going to ask you, Joe, why you think this is different under Kieran McKenna, if indeed you do.
Well, I don't think Cook or Lambert had ever shown that they could win games, bar that period in the season at the start of our first year down where we did win those games, but we were winning a lot of those 1-0, and generally it was like we're not playing very well in any of these games. We just seem to score a goal early and just shutting up shop and doing all right. And like I say, where it's 4 and 15, and that is an abysmal record, there's no getting away from that. Well, how many games have we lost in that period? Like 2, and it's just turning these draws into wins. And it seems that at the start of the run, we were drawing games because we were playing well and getting unlucky, a late goal, a deflection, this. But now, by the end of it, it's almost like we've forgotten how to win in this run. But it doesn't feel like, I don't know, when I see the players, I don't feel like any of them are chucking it in. They're all still trying. They're all there, but they've just lost that confidence. They've lost that speed, that tempo to their game. And I think a lot of that comes from the sort of engine room in the middle of the pitch and just having, we've basically got one midfield, haven't we, in Sam Morsey, who's a sort of senior guy at this level. Lee Evans came back into the side, but when he did, he wasn't, bar that Oxford game at home, he hasn't really looked himself. Cameron Humphreys is struggling, and we've got no one to take the load off him. And it does seem that we've made a mistake in the January window with what we've left ourselves in sort of available in central midfield. And I don't think any of that is unpredictable, what has happened there. Luongo, a guy who's played 45 games in 3.5 seasons, coming in and not being fit. Is that a surprise? Lee Evans, who's never played more than 30 games in the season, picking up another long-term injury. I don't think that's a surprise. Ball, we already knew was injured. Camara was, I don't know what's gone on with that signing there, but he's signed unfit. Is still unfit. Doesn't look like he's going to play this season. It seems a strange one there. So I just think we've got ourselves into a bit of a muddle with the squad, and the sooner we get a Dominic Ball or a Massimo Luongo back and in this side, I think it's going to make a massive difference to us. And ultimately, we're still fourth in the table. We're still going to get in the playoffs, and we've just got to make sure that we haven't won 4 of the last 15 games going into the playoffs. We've won 10 of the last 15 or 9 of the last 15, so we actually go in there in a bit of form.
Indeed, but despite all of that and lacking numbers and experience in central midfield, we should, Craig, have more than enough to get past this Bristol Rovers team, which had lost, what was it, 5 of their last 5 games. They played a very defensive, low block 4-3-3 formation, but really it was a number 10 playing in a false 9, and then Anderson and Sinclair trying to get up with him where possible. Is it Quansah at the back? He was their man of the match, and I thought that Gordon, the left back, you spit Brentford, was decent as well. But yeah, come on, Craig, like we had more than enough in that team, didn't we?
Yeah, we did to trample over Grant Ward. It was nice to see Grant Ward again in the flesh, wasn't it? Have about half a dozen touches during the course of 90 minutes. But yeah, even then he wasn't. We didn't take advantage of him in midfield. He wasn't. Morsey didn't beat him in that battle. None of our players won their battles really. Ladapo was up against their 2 centre halves, as you say, but I thought he played okay, didn't he? He was trying his best at least. But I can't really think that many of the others really won their individual battles, sadly.
They seem to switch it around quite a bit between sort of 4 at the back and 5 at the back, and that Anderson, who was like a right forward at the start, ended up being a right back, marking Davis, didn't he? But we just didn't really adjust to those in-game changes.
No. Yeah, as you say, Rikey, it was very deep, but I'm not entirely sure why we should be surprised by that. If we're naive enough to think that, despite what Bristol Rovers have done in the last game,
it was always going to be that way.
Yeah, exactly that.
And it wasn't like the Cambridge game either. They didn't really start with huge amounts of intensity. They kind of grew in confidence as the game went on, didn't they?
As I was dropped.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually made a fairly bright start. We had a corner down the left in just the second minute. And Davis played one of the nice sort of short corners, that the only ones that we seem to look dangerous from at the moment. Ball falls to Cameron Humphreys. He just makes sure he gets his head over the ball, gets a half decent shot in, and it's saved by the goalkeeper. And a little bit of bad luck that it sort of jumps up in Burgess's face, doesn't it? Then we don't really kick on from there. And it's just another stodgy first half on the road, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Burgess, Burgess had it was difficult to tell from Ireland. We were right behind the goal and at quite a shallow gradient, should we say? So getting the depth perception of what was going on in the other room was a little bit tricky sometimes. But there was a header from a corner, I think it was, or a free kick, and then that was pretty much it. That was all she wrote really for the first half. There was certainly nothing happening down our end. Walton wasn't being troubled particularly, but as you say, it's just a stodgy, slow, as we're used to nowadays in our away games, unfortunately.
Would you have made a change at half time, Joe?
I wouldn't, but just the thing I was going to say there is the problem as well is that we're slow and stodgy, but we also commit a lot of men forward, and we sort of just leave our defence sort of 2-on-2. And we're lucky that sort of Luke Wolfenden and Cameron Burgess had good games last night, because they had a lot of sort of defending to do just as a pair against Collins and Coburn, who came on at the end, and it's a bit of a worry. Like on the break, they look quite dangerous, and it's like we've got all these men committed forward, but none of them are actually doing anything to try and help score a goal. It wasn't until someone like Broadhead came on that we actually committed men forward, wasn't it? And he actually tried to commit people in challenges. But whilst I wouldn't have made a change at half time, it did seem like Harness just was off his game, and Luco was just so deep that neither of those. I thought around the pitch we were playing okay, but just in that centre of the pitch, it was just slowing it down. Like there were some decent balls over to Davis. He was getting some okay crosses in. Sort of Burns and Dinashian combined a couple of times on the right hand side, and we were doing okay. Morsey and Humphreys were probably just on top in the first half, but went behind the second. But it's just it was just a gaping gap between where Morsey and Humphreys were sort of sitting deeper behind the ball and where Ladapo was, with 2 defenders all over him like a rash. That it's just like you need more from your tens there. You need them helping Ladapo. You need them either trying to commit players, draw fouls, beat players, get in between the lines. But they just, Harness was trying to do it, but nothing was coming off from him. Luco just seemed to get deeper and deeper.
Yeah, Luco was playing with his back to goal more often than not, wasn't he, when he did get it?
Yeah, well, we were sort of just playing. Well, Harness was wide, wasn't he? And Luco was playing very central, and obviously Burns was on the right. But when Aluko decides to drop, there is that whacking great hole. It's right in the middle of the pitch where the ball will just drop, won't it? If there are scraps off Ladapo or scraps off of their centre halves, it's dropping to that hole, and there was nobody there to pick it up, was there? You know, Aluko fought for how well he played at Burnley. I thought he was pretty poor last night, unfortunately.
Yeah, wasn't his best game by any stretch. So yeah, as I mentioned, going into the second half, no immediate changes. Ladapo hits an effort from just outside the box over the bar as we come out looking like we're at least up for it in the second half. Broadhead and Edwards then come on for Aluko and Burns. As we mentioned, Aluko never quite able to make it happen for us. Burns again, maybe not positive enough either, Joe. Wasn't taking his man on.
No, he was just sort of getting across there, and like Davis started to in the second half. All it was just trying to roll the ball back to Morsey, and then it wasn't sort of hammered quickly back in from there. It then just seemed to slow down at that point. And sometimes I know we don't have enough men in the box, but you've just got to whip it across, don't you, and get it in the box more, and try and hope something happens. And by sort of more luck than judgment, sometimes you just need to get it in there. But no, it seems, sort of looking back at the season, it's just, I think since Harness picked up that injury, he hasn't been the same player since he's come back by that Oxford game, and John Jules has been injured since that sort of Charlton game, which seems to have changed the season. And we've lost that player, I think, who plays in that 10 that tries things in that position. We've got Aluko who's very safe with the ball, Chapman who likes to shoot, and that's about all we've got there at the moment, isn't it? Hopefully Broadhead looks like he could be a player that makes a difference in that, in a similar way to John Jules was. But how is he going to be able to play every game, or is he going to struggle with injuries? Because it sounds like he's not up to speed yet.
Yeah, worrying stuff in the position of the part of the pitch where we were sort of saying that we had a complete luxury of riches, and it probably wasn't the night to play Caden Jackson either, was it, against that low block, Craig?
No, exactly that. Because a bit like Burns, they haven't really got, as was said there by A about people taking their players on. Neither of them got a trick in their pocket, have they? It's either the ball's fed inside the fullback to chase onto, or they'll knock it past and basically try and beat someone for pace. But as you know, there's two guys marking it. When Edwards come on, as soon as he got the ball, there were at least two of their players on him, weren't there, straight away? Although, you know, he did his best. He did take his fullback on a couple of times. Broadhead was the one that made the most difference, I think, in terms of driving forward. But as I say, until such time as Clark got on, and sort of Clark just seemed to be always standing in the space where Broadhead was looking to get into.
It was unnatural. It was unnatural playing over on the left for Clark, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you could tell that, couldn't you? And again, everything's got to come back onto his right foot. But just sort of going back to something that Joe was talking about getting the crosses in, there were a few times last night where we'd get a cross and it'd come back, but then we'd just take a touch, and you think just hit it first time, just get the ball back in the box, just keep that pressure on. That's something we were very good at the beginning of the season. Is just, you know, keeping the opposition pressed into their 20 yards away from their goal, and just keeping them in, sort of suffocating them with pressure, really, and intensity. But we just let people breathe now. We just step back off and we recycle it again, and we recycle it again. We get everything set up, don't we? It goes back to the defenders, or it goes back to Walton just to set everything again. And you see Morsey just telling everyone to calm down. Well, we don't need to be calming down. We need to be, you know,
speeding up.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. Don't keep setting it up. You know, there's so much trust in the process that it will eventually come, that they seemingly happy.
Yeah, but the process isn't what it was it? When you talk about doing the right things, we've got that fear in how we play now, and it's too much safe percentage football in those passes. And when we're talking about pinning those in, and you've got one of the perfect examples was against Bristol Rovers at home, where we did that to them, and we just went over and over, and we just kept pushing and kept the pace up. And you see it a couple of times last night where you get a free kick and you take the free kick so quickly just to keep the ball moving, but then you're not trying to cut them out. There was one bit of play down in front of the Ipswich fans where we're passing it around the 6-yard box, and we've committed 4 men into the press, effectively played it round them, and Glenn Wheeler on the commentary saying, "Oh, we've committed 4 men on the press. Are we going to do anything there?" And then all of a sudden, Donatian's got the ball and he slows down, turns back inside, and we move it there. And then they've got 11 men back behind the ball, and it's like, if you're going to play the ball around in your own 6-yard box, because that isn't easy and it's dangerous, and you're going to take 4 people out of the game by doing it, you then need to exploit the fact
quick.
4 of their players are not in position, not
Yeah.
let them get back. So you've then got 11 players to go at. And this, I don't know, that's what we seem to be doing too much at the moment.
And at times, because you mentioned, Joe, how we're leaving so few players at the back. Humphreys loses the ball on halfway, and Sinclair, a little bit wasteful, hits a tame shot straight at Walton. Yeah, it's Bristol Rovers that at this stage of the game, in the middle of the second half, you look the most likely. We survive a real scare in the 68th minute, Joe. I guess it was the other end of the pitch to you, Craig, where Walton drops a chipped, I think it was a chipped shot from Collins. And it was just Keystone
Under
Cops
zero
stage,
pressure, he just drops it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's lucky. I don't know how close it was to crossing the line, because it was Wolfie sort of dived up to it and kicked it, and it went into the post in a way. And it's like, that must have been inches. If there was goal line technology on that wouldn't have been far off going in, because it's hard to tell whether Wolfie kicked it back onto the post or forward onto the post or straight onto the post. But that was just a simple, dinked ball into the box. Walton just under no pressure at all, up and just
drops his feet,
spills it. And I say, he's got away with a bit. He's got away with one big time there, Walton, hasn't he? And he's not a player that's been playing particularly well again.
Yeah. And at the other end, a nice switch from Morsey ends with Broadhead twisting and turning, getting a decent shot away. I think we mentioned that it was Broadhead that was trying to make things happen. Then a triple sub, Clark, who we mentioned, Chaplin and Hurst coming on. And that's after 75 minutes. Maybe a bit of a surprise not to see Chaplin come on earlier, Craig, with things not really working for us.
Yeah, exactly that. And as Joe was saying about Broadhead and Chaplin being potentially your most likely number 10s to create or at least have a shot. But as you say, Mikey, once Clark came on the left for Davis, he just seemed to. It was unnatural, and as I said, he just seemed to clog up the space that Broadhead wanted to exploit. And then we didn't know who was taking corners when we got them, which was another interesting thing that cropped up yesterday, wasn't it? Edwards was being told to take them from one side, and I don't think we knew who was going to take them from the other, which is strange.
I think it's embarrassing, really. I know, just sort of holding your words back there, but strange. We talk about the penalty at the weekend. We're talking about corners. This stuff should be sorted, and the players should know exactly who's taking set pieces from which area. Like, I know Broadhead scored that brilliant free kick at the weekend, but they're sort of saying, "Oh, none of us knew he could take a free kick," and he took that. And it's like, why are we not working on this sort of stuff? Like, for some stuff like it's so detailed, the stuff we do, and the millions, I should say, of backroom staff we have. It's like, surely somebody should be saying, these are your penalty takers, 1, 2, 3. These are your corners on that side, 1, 2, 3. That side, 1, 2, 3. Because Leif Davis doesn't often play 90 minutes, does he? He seems to go off with 10 minutes left, and everyone was sort of looking around at each other like, oh, who's taking this? And Cameron Humphreys went across and took one short, and it's like, oh, come on, this is sort of basic stuff, really, isn't it?
We do actually nearly score from one of those confusing corners, though, where I think it's played short by Clark to Edwards, and then Edwards tries to take on his man, loses it, but it falls to Clark, and Clark's quite shows good feet, gets to the byline, cuts it across. Keeper has to make a save for a change. And then Hurst has a shot from a tight angle. Hurst didn't really...
Bloody hell, mate. You're dealing with scraps here, Mikey.
Yeah, really dealing with scraps. Keeper spills it behind. The keeper was taking ages with his kicks, and I know it's been a frustration throughout. Maybe the referee could have booked him earlier on, or booked him at all, and then maybe they wouldn't have been able to take this thing out of it quite so much. But
I didn't think they were that bad last night in terms of that. Obviously, we had a couple of guys drop to the floor with whatever injury they had, but I didn't think the goalkeeper's taking the piss too much, to be fair. He wasn't exactly, taking the ball from one side of the area to the other or anything like that. I think, at the end of the day, we just got to score. You go into the lead, the teams won't do it.
I think we do have a problem, though, that whenever we gain a bit of momentum, 2 of their players sit down on the ground and the game totally stops. And there, so it's almost like we're playing that more percentage football, because it's almost everyone's scared of the ball going off the pitch, because they know as soon as the ball goes off the pitch, when we pick up a bit of momentum, the life is just going to be sucked out of the game there. But again, it's something we've got to learn to deal with. But it is, I don't know, it is frustrating. So even watching it from here, like, come on, corner, let's go. And then all of a sudden it's, oh no, 2 of their players got cramp and we're going to sit here and 4 minutes later, the game's about to start, and then 20 seconds after that, the sub's going to get made, and it's a bit like, oh, come on, we sort of actually want to watch football here, not that. But
I just think we need to be careful trying to show ourselves as being some Corinthian outfit with the good of football at heart in League One. You just need to get out of the league. Just deal with it.
Yeah, Michael Horner does bring up, though, what about the Bristol coach who kicked a second ball onto the pitch when we were taking a throw-in? Yeah, frustrating, but this is a Joey Barton team. That's the sort of thing you've got to expect, and maybe the sort of thing that we would have been doing under Lambert when we were underdogs going into games.
He did also bring down a goal kick, didn't he? On the inside of his, I don't know if you saw from the side, Mikey, but he brought it down under control, absolutely beautifully, straight out of a goal kick. I think from the
what
side.
Barton or a coach?
No, the same guy that kicked the ball on the pitch. Yeah.
Fair play. 5 minutes of added time, Craig, and absolutely nothing happens. Full time is met with some boos and a little bit of aggro between Morsey and a fan. I think it's sort of been left behind now. Morsey tweeted an apology. He probably shouldn't. Isn't a great look after a poor performance, but
no, just read the room, isn't it? Really, just go over, applaud, take whatever grief you're getting, turn your back, get back to the change room, and get on the bus. Just
because there is
old enough to know what to do, isn't he?
Decent sized section of our away fans who spend the whole time effing and blinding at the players, and I'm sure they were giving him a load of unnecessary and over the top stick. And I can see why people react, but like you said, you can't, can you? You've just got to clap your hands, look miserable, walk off, go home. But I don't know. Sometimes the fans, like I say, they don't help things away from home. Some of it.
No, yeah, I didn't think our fans were particularly good last night either. I know we keep selling out, but if you're gonna go and you're just gonna moan, then you're not really contributing much, in my opinion. But
there's a big sense of entitlement, isn't there, in the fan base? But expectations have been raised, but by the club and the people within the club, certain people within the club.
Yeah.
You can understand why the expectations are, and you can sort of understand why the frustrations are probably multiplied as a result of it when things don't go particularly well.
Yeah, it's hard to say whether it's entitlement or expectation, isn't it, at the moment? Because we've been told this is what we got. We see the money we're spending. We see the squad we've built, and we should be doing better than we are. And the problem does come sometimes when there's a game when you play well, you don't win it, and people still kick off because they effectively just don't watch the game. They just look at the scoreboard at the end of the game and decide whether they're happy or not, or they F and blind. But there is a real sort of negativity over a big chunk of the fan base at the moment, and I'd say we're seeing it here. And I don't know, the club, I'd say we're playing Forest Green at home on Saturday, and if we're sort of not winning after half an hour there, you know what the atmosphere is going to be like if there's misplaced passes there, and it's going to take a turnaround from here, which is a shame.
Toxic.
Yeah, it's going to be a shame because it's going to take sort of winning any game we lose from now on. You know what the reaction is going to be, and it's hard to play in those conditions.
Yeah, we need to be galvanised. Life's too short. Says we have to keep faith in McKenna. It's his first major wobble. He'll be astute enough to work this out. Our support base has neurotic tendencies and panics very quickly, and understandably so after the last decade or so that we've had.
Although it just says there that he's astute enough to work it out. Well, I've been watching the same away performance for the last however many away performances on the trot, seemingly. So he needs to start sorting out sooner or later.
Okay. Rich, going into this game, after 5 minutes of bombardment, do you guys think our heads dropped when this early goal didn't come? Do you think there was a lot, maybe too much of the pre-match talk in that dressing room, can we assume, was about let's get this early goal and then we'll be fine? And then when it doesn't happen, maybe a little bit of panic sets in?
Yeah, possibly. I think what did happen after the first 5 minutes was sort of relating to what you were saying there, Mikey, was the crowd. It just seemed to suck the life out of the crowd, didn't it, really? It was really a really half-hearted effort from the supporters. But, whether that was a case of seeing those first 2 or 3 chances and then not going in and thinking, Christ, here we go again. You could sort of see very early doors what was going to happen for the subsequent 75, 80 minutes, really, couldn't you? So whether they could see it on the pitch as well, who knows?
Hmm.
I don't think it was a confidence thing, as Joe sort of says about them trusting the process. But but I think they've got or did have a lot of trust in the way that they play, etc., etc. They think there will still be opportunities will arise if we keep playing this way, but it's just not at the moment.
No. If only they had a David Bergen to galvanise them. He's popped in with €10. Thank you very much, David. That maybe go towards Craig's petrol for last night, or did he stop at any service stations, or was it a
on the
burger at
way
the ground?
On the way, Cheveley, but only for a quick wee. And on the way back, we diverted around Cheveley, and we seemed to divert around every single service station on the way home. So no, I had to stop in a lay-by on the way back near a load of truckers and have a wee. So happy Valentine's Day to me.
We watch
and them.
Lovely stuff. I'm glad I asked. I really am. Right, let's get back into some of these comments. Leif Davis. So this from Michael Warner. First full season for Davis. With all the running he does, he just looks like he has run out of pace. That's what was so good when Lee could come on in the 65th, 70th minute. Yeah, Clark coming in and having that extra defender, it's kind of put pay to Greg Lee being on the bench a little bit, hasn't it? And Kane Vincent-Young, Joe, who I believe was on iFollow commentary last night.
He was, yes. But it's funny that because there is a lot of rotation amongst the forward players in this squad, but it seems that sort of Leif Davis and Wes Burns, who are probably the two players who do the most running in the team, seem sort of immune from the rotation and even immune from being subbed off even as much compared to the other guys. It's only in recent weeks that Jackson's played really well in that Wes Burns role in the sort of cup games that he's now been given a few more chances in the league, and Burns has been coming off a bit early for him. But it does seem that we ask a hell of a lot of those two players because they are up and down the pitch all game, but yet we seem to rotate the 10s more and the strikers more. Someone like Ladapo, who maybe doesn't need to do as much running because he's playing with his back to goal a lot in a possession-heavy team, but yet sort of Davis does struggle with his condition, doesn't he? Towards the end of the game, he's never as effective in the last half hour as he is in the first hour, and he's been a sort of brilliant signing and probably our sort of most creative player, sort of in-game set pieces and stuff. But I know it is strange how those two seem to play as many minutes as they do.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, wouldn't be a big surprise to see Greg Lee on Saturday, perhaps. But
we were talking about that actually, Mikey, on the way home about what, as you always do, 4 hours to spare. What would you do what would you do at the weekend, sort of thing? And we were sort of questioning whether, do you know what? And in relation to some of the questions that are coming or comments from John there about physicality and directness, if you went with your nominal fullbacks being Clark and Lee, it just adds a bit of robustness to your team, just a bit more direct running, a bit more physicality. It just turns you into more of a League One team, if you like to be basic about it. But as we all know, Greg Lee hasn't done anything at all to let anyone down at any point, and he seems ideally suited to League One football, doesn't he?
Yeah, and Davis equally a nice sub to have come on with his left foot.
But it does seem that Davis, as soon as there's a cup game, Davis is nowhere near it. He's never travelling. He's not on the bench for it because he's just obviously needs that rest. This is really his first full season of football, and he's been asked to play a real heavy role on the legs, isn't it? And like I say, I know people say, everyone can play 2 games in a week. But he can't do that. But it's just that his effectiveness goes down when he does that.
Yeah,
and as when Mick Mills says on Suffolk about the fact that Donatian's got Burns in front of him, Davis hasn't got anybody in front of him. Davis is doing that job as well as that job, isn't he? If you know what I mean, he's having to potentially cover a little bit more ground.
There's been quite a good conversation about midfield, the midfield in the chat. Rob says it was quite an open game for the whole 90 minutes. Centre mid looked a little gassed. Excuse the pun. Nick Will says Humphreys looks to be really struggling on Saturday and Tuesday. Can Aluko or even Wolfenden take Humphreys' place? And I think there was somebody else saying maybe Harry Clark could do it.
Yeah, it's a bit like more.
Actually, Paul Whitmore says maybe Burns could could fill in there. Not perfect, but mobile, strong, and aggressive. If we are looking for a square peg and a round hole, who are you looking at, Joe?
I'd probably say Harry Clark. Obviously, I've not seen him play there, but he's a player that's played right back, right wing back, left wing back. Similar to Kane Vincent Young, that he's sort of a player that you feel you could drop anywhere on the pitch and he'd do okay, but with the added physicality that you probably need in that League One midfield at times. So I think I'd go with him, but ideally, Massimo Luongo is back fit. We keep hearing, he's not quite ready, he's not quite there. And it's like, well, the club has gone from being very open with injuries at the start of the season to now being quite, not totally opaque, but it seems like they've sort of shut down a little bit the conversation, other than they're not available for the next games, but we're hearing at the moment on that. But we just need to, I don't know, Sam Morsey's probably been our best player for the first half of the season. And he's struggling at the moment. He's struggling to put two good halves together at the moment. And I don't know whether it's because he's playing with Cameron Humphreys and he feels he's got to sort of sit a little bit deeper and cover a little bit more and do that, or whether he's just feeling the pace of it. But he's going to have us, or maybe because he knows he's got a 2-game suspension after one more booking, that he's having to play with the handbrake on a little bit, because he just knows as a club we can't afford to not have him for 2 games. But he's not been the same player in the last sort of 3 or 4 games, has he? He's been. His standards he's set himself the standards, which are incredibly high, and he's not hit those standards. But there's, like I said, there could be a myriad of reasons for that. But I say, someone mentioned in the comments, is it sort of the Charlton away game where John Jules got injured? Have we been the same since then? And obviously the Charlton there, but that was Don Ball's last game, I think, as available in the league. And I think we've really missed Don Ball, who I think was a player that we signed to come in and sort of play every game.
And just having the option.
The option as well, because we've basically had Morsey and Evans playing every minute together. Evans getting injured, Morsey and Humphreys playing every minute together. Evans coming back fit, Morsey and Evans playing every minute together. Evans getting injured again, and then Morsey and Humphreys playing every minute together. There's not been any chance where you can drop Don Ball in for a couple of games.
Humphreys, on the whole, has done really well. It's a difficult job that he's coming in is doing. He's only 19 years old, and even last night, you still see he's a fantastic footballer. But it's a really difficult apprenticeship that he's doing at the moment. In
I think when you play like that, they pick games where they want to drop you in and out of to help your development. And some of the games he's playing are games where I just don't think, like I say, this is the hope that over the rest of the season that Luongo and Ball can get back to fit and can actually sort of change that midfield around.
And also as well, in terms of his age, and confidence, he's going to be affected more by a drop in confidence around the team than most, due to the fact of his age and the experience in terms of numbers of games. So he'll probably go into his shell more than others, which I think is also an issue. But it's quite interesting to know, as Joe was pointing out there, is it subconscious on Morsey's behalf that he's now sitting deeper, or has he been told to sit deeper to take care of Humphreys or do a bit of his running for him? But they're pretty much playing side by side at the moment, aren't they? There isn't really, Humphreys isn't playing further forward by virtue of Morsey dropping deeper. They're both playing deeper, which is one of the issues we've got.
Absolutely. And just a question on pace here. Max FX, first half of the season, we got away with a lack of foot speed with quick ball movement. Now we seem to be taking an extra touch or two and look really slow. Do you think that is partly because we're playing teams for the second time now, Craig, and they kind of know how to play against us, and they know that if they can slow us down, it's going to be difficult for us to get into the positions that we want to be in?
Yeah, I think it was probably that, and also confidence as well, isn't it? If you haven't got the confidence, then you're not going to be taking or hitting anything first time. You're going to want that second and third touch to give you that comfort that everything's under control and ready. And also you probably don't want the crowd on your back if you do happen to make a mistake or a misplaced pass. But Max is exactly right there. That's what it has been. That has been our failing for the last 6 weeks, however long it's been. It's just the amount of touches that we have to take, and everything's so slow and pedestrian. It was being murmured around the crowd last night. Just do things quicker. People aren't asking you to pump the ball long or just whack it onto the
summer.
Well, it's summer, but it just add a bit of snap to the play. That's what's missing. Clearly,
play the passes for the person to run onto rather than have to go and then take a step back to get the ball, and you lose all momentum in the attack on it. And the sort of central midfield has been a problem with that, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But obviously, but also, as you say, Mike, there is an element of playing each other twice. I mentioned it 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's like when teams go up to the Premier League, isn't it? When people play them the first time round, they're a little bit of a non-entity. I was going to say that, an unknown quantity. But the second time round, they've been a little bit more sussed out, and it's been shown time and time again that there's a certain way to play against us. If you want to stifle us, just stick all your players behind the ball and keep it nice and narrow and fill the box. And we'll struggle.
Yeah. So I don't think it's about playing us a second time. I think it's what Craig said there, that there's a league-wide... The teams know how to play against us because we haven't worked out how to break through this. And like I watched Sheffield Wednesday, and teams don't sit in against them, and it's probably because they've shown that they can break down that, because they've got different ways of doing that. But we haven't shown that we can beat these teams yet. And if you're a home team and you get a point against high flying Ipswich, then you take that every day, wouldn't you? Because if you come and try and do what Morecambe did and open up and play against us, we're going to take you to the cleaners. But no one's stupid enough to do that anymore, because we haven't worked out. But because we haven't worked out how to clear this yet, then we're not getting other hurdles to jump, because we've shown for 10 games we haven't been able to clear this one.
Yeah.
Jamie Souza, such a talented squad, but can't help but feel we've brought too much for resale value rather than the qualities needed to get out of this division. Do you think that's fair, Joe?
I think it's probably fair, but I think it's, if obviously we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know how much the pension fund is willing to invest, how long term an investment they see, and if it's going to be a case of it's going to take a year longer to get out of League One, but when we get out, we're going to be stronger than we get to the Championship. Well, yeah, I can understand that approach, but we're not privy to any of that information. But when you look at Sheffield Wednesday, for example, would you want to be given Hickway and Smith 3-year contracts on 12 grand a week when they've got no future value sort of to come from that, just to get out of this league this time? And it seems that they've built themselves to get out of this league, and then they're going to have to set up again when they get to the Championship, which is fine. But you're signing players for big money on long contracts that have proven they can't play at the Championship level previously. So it's a different way to go. I think the way we're going is the correct way to go, but it's just going to take some more skill from the manager and the squad to get out of it. And well, we noticed last year that all the signings we made in the summer were bigger players, more physical players than what we'd made in the previous year. And it'd be interesting to see, if we don't go up this year, what sort of players McKenna looks at again.
That was one of the comments in the Telegram group, and it was a good point actually, is that when Evans is out the team, you've suddenly lost a lot of height in the centre midfield, aren't you? Just in front of that back four to do a bit of mopping up and winning those headers that don't quite reach your defensive line. You've got Humphreys and Moores in there standing on each other's shoulders. It's probably about the same height as Cameron Burgess. So, but then as Joe says, Don Ball, he's a big old unit, isn't he? Kamara is a decent size as well. So by virtue of just having one of those two in your central midfield, it again just adds a bit of size and League One stature, shall we say, to your makeup.
Indeed. Let's have a quick look at the match stats from last night before we just forget about this game forever. Maybe you won't ever forget that journey though, Craig. Mm-hmm. So yeah, 66% possession, 22 shots. I think it was 7 on target, but really, was it? We had 10 corners. Somehow an XG of 2.55, but I'm guessing that might be...
The Foot Mob one was 1.18 against 0.65, which sounds more realistic.
Yeah, 2.55 doesn't seem right to me, although we got close to the goal a couple of times, didn't we? But in quite wide positions, so I don't know what the XG would be like on that. But anyway, let's look at the other results. We're starting to look at different teams now, aren't we, when we look at these results? So yeah, Wickham, they're coming for us now. 2-0 winners at Accrington. Bolton, 5-0 winners over Milton Keynes Dons. What we do for another 5-0 at home on Saturday. Cambridge are a good side, aren't they, Craig? 2-1 defeat at home to Cheltenham. Derby dropped points, though, at home to Lincoln at least. Peterborough seems to be in a real sticky patch again. Lost away at Fleetwood. Plymouth, yeah, no foggy memories for them at Oxford. 3-1 winners there. Not really our problem now though, Plymouth, by the looks of it. Barnsley 3-1 winners at Port Vale. And yeah, Sheffield Wednesday just getting the job done at home to Morecambe with a 3-0 victory. And that leaves the top 8 looking like this. We're now we've dropped down to 4th. Look at those draws. 12 draws.
Top
That's
8. I'm sure we used to just show the top 3, didn't we? Now we're showing the top 8.
If we win our game in hand, we'll be back in 3rd.
Yep, that is true.
What if Derby win both their games in hand?
Then, as long as they win it by less than however many goals, we'll be there.
Yeah, Wickham going to be within 4 points of us if they win their game in hand and we don't win ours. But yeah.
But what about
Forest? Yeah, Forest Green on Saturday. Rich and Seb will be back with a pre-match show, which is a pre-record this time. That will be live. Well, it won't be live, but it will be available on Friday morning. But the flagship show on Sunday night at 8 o'clock, usual time, will be live. And that's Benjamin Bloom hosting with David Diamond and Rich on that one. Let's dip back into some more questions. Eric Claxton, the drop in form is huge. Why has it happened over so many games?
Don't know.
We've come up against a test that we haven't worked out how to beat, and by not beating it, our confidence has got lower, and it's made it harder for us. And everyone's seen that we can't do it, so they're keeping doing it. So we're just being asked the same question, and we haven't found a way to answer it yet.
And the thing is, as well, is we're trying to answer it the same way. That's the issue, isn't it? Is we're trying the same answer each time, and it's not working, and we don't seem to be trying a different answer to answer the same question. If you know what I mean, it's more of just we'll do the same, but with different players. It hasn't worked. We'll just try the same again with more different players, or the different subs coming on and doing the same role as the guys that they've replaced.
Charlie D says he doesn't remember 22 shots. Our good friend Graham Blackburn of the Naked Footy Show, I think he had about 22 shots last night. I believe he was out until 2:30 partying with the students, I believe, which was good to hear. Michael Warner, do you think we maybe need to change the goalkeeper, not for the saves, although Walton hasn't really made many saves in recent weeks, but for his use of the ball? It would be... That's the sort of decision that could split a dressing room, isn't it?
It's a nuclear option, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been great with the boys, but I don't think it's anything that's particularly shown as being a problem. As we were saying earlier about that time that we did, basically Bolton had it in his own 6-yard box and we played out. He's not so bad under the sort of pressure. He stays pretty calm in those situations, doesn't he?
David Bergen, heaven forbid, if we don't make the playoffs, do you think questions will be asked of the management team?
We will make the playoffs.
We will make the playoffs.
But yes, they will be asked.
Yeah.
they have to be, don't they? Not being funny. If McKenna and the backroom staff don't get that squad into the top 6 of League One, then there will be I'd imagine there'll be serious questions being asked.
Kirk says his main criticism of McKenna and why he doesn't think we'll make the playoffs is we're too stat obsessed.
I think that there's a lot of talk about no plan B, playing the same tactics, needs to do this, but we do mix things up in games. Like I say, we were at Cambridge and we ended up with 2 up front, Harness playing in midfield, Morsey playing there. We change things, but ultimately you change things within the same personnel, and it's more just that what we've been doing differently hasn't worked, as opposed to not having a plan B. It's just that the plan B hasn't worked and people don't like it because it's not put 2 big men up front and lump the ball to them. But when we did have 2 strikers on the pitch, we looked worse than we did when we had 1 striker on the pitch. It looked totally confused because no one knew what to be. Like I say, McKenna is trying to find ways to get over this, but ultimately the thing we're missing, which is the thing that he can't change, is tempo. The tempo of the game needs to be faster. And I've seen it from Mick McCarthy on the sideline. I've seen it from Paul Lambert on the sideline. I've seen it from Paul Cook on the sideline. I've seen it from Kieran McKenna on the sideline, standing there trying to G the players up, shout them to move the ball faster. But if the players don't do it, there's not a huge amount you can do. It only takes one person to slow the game down, and the game's slowed, and it's too late. And the managers pull their hair out, and it's not a McKenna thing. It's every Ipswich manager you've seen when the defensive line's dropping and they're standing on the side saying, push up. But ultimately, once they cross the white line, the players have got their decisions to make. A's just made a comment there with too many players who are not on their A game. Yeah, that's a problem. You can't, no matter how good the team is and how good the squad is, if you've got 7 players playing at 6 out of 10 standard, you're not going to win games unless one of the other 4 is playing at a 9 out of 10 standard. And at the moment, it's all 6s and 7s, and we need to turn that into 7s and 8s. And we need to up the tempo. We need to move the ball quicker. We need to take more risks, and that's a mental thing for players, isn't it? It's not a coaching thing.
There weren't too many 6s and 7s in Andy Warren's match ratings.
Okay, 5s and 6 maybe over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, I haven't read those yet.
David Jones predicts Sheffield Wednesday, Plymouth and Bolton. 2 of those 3 will take first and second. He's going for Derby v Ipswich and Barnsley v Wickham in the playoffs. It's crucial that we find some momentum from somewhere, even if we are going to, if we are going to miss out on the top 2, it's important that we end the season in decent form, isn't it? That's for sure, because confidence is clearly a very important thing in this dressing room.
There's a long way to the end of the season, isn't it? We've still got 15, 16 games left. There's still 3 months to go, effectively. We're not going to be playing as badly as we are now at the end of the season. Because if we are, the shit will have hit the fan before that point. We can't play like this for another 8, 9, 10 games, can we? If we do, something would have had to have changed. So I say, when you look at the home teams we've got coming up, we're going to win the majority of the home games we've got left. In reality, our home form hasn't really suffered in this run. We're still beating teams at home. It's just we're drawing to Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday, who are better than us, frankly. But we're not going to struggle to beat Forest Green at home, Accrington Stanley at home, Burton at home. We've got all those teams to come, and we're going to start winning games. But it's just one of those things at the moment that we need to win some games to get the confidence up to play better. It seems, but we can't. We're in that catch-22.
Indeed. Marius Carrick says, on the plus side, I'm not as worried about a club from a high league pinch from McKenna as I used to be. That's the gallows humour. I think last comment of the night, we'll try and finish on a positive note. Stephen Beals on Facebook says, lots of anger and frustration around last night and today. We need to move on quickly and support the team we love as much as possible. Just got to hope we can turn this poor form around. Have you still got every faith that we will turn it around and against Forest Green on Saturday, Craig?
Yes. The thing is, you know that behind the scenes that they will be doing everything they can, won't they, to turn it around. There's no reason why it shouldn't turn around. If a team, I'm going to sound horribly demeaning, but if a team like Shrewsbury can string these amount of wins they have done together and start looking like a playoff team, certainly on current form, then there's no reason to suggest why we can't. We just need to somehow persuade the opposition not to sit deep and let us play the ball around a little bit and score it. We just need an early goal, don't we? Early goal, take the pressure off. That, as you said earlier, Micah, that would be the worst thing at the weekend is if we haven't scored in the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Everyone starts getting edgy then, don't they? Yeah, absolutely. But it's up to us to support those guys that are on the pitch doing it, but also they've got to give us some crumbs to feed on, I think.
Indeed. Any last words from you, Joe?
I think it's just a case of just trying to keep behind the team, try and support the team in the stadium and help us to get to victories. But I said we've made these signings in January, and we now need to give those guys a run in the team. I think they've been signed in to push us on. Harry Clark, you've got to give him that run at right back. You've got to give Broadhead a run in the team. He looks like he's going to deserve it. And George Hurst, again, he's signed. He's someone we've chased for a long time. It's like you either sort of trust him to give him the minutes, or you need to just back Freddie Ladapo. But I don't think starting one game and starting one the next game is working. I think if you're going to rotate them, it needs to be off a sort of consistent starting base as opposed to a sort of changing base from there.
And there's no reason why, is there? Because after we've got a week, haven't we? There's a week between games for the next 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it happens to be. So we haven't got to rotate because people can't manage 2 games in a week, or 3 games in a week.
Indeed, yeah. Keep the faith, guys. Thank you very much for for tonight, Craig and Joe. Let's go and watch the Arsenal Man City game, the second half of that. Yeah, thanks everyone for your questions, the live chat. I know that we're becoming a little bit divided, aren't we? But it was a pleasure to be with you on the podcast tonight. Please give us a thumbs up on YouTube, a like if you can. That does make a big difference. So yeah, moving on to Forest Green on Saturday. Let's get back to winning ways.